Thanks for staying up later. The director, Tim Burton, is with us. Coming up very soon is Batman Returns, the sequel to the enormously successful Batman, which, of course, Tim directed, as he did Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Now, I know that you have an aversion, generally speaking, to sequels. Other than the enormous financial success of Batman, which I think is the 5th highest grossing picture of all time, why do a sequel in this case?
Well, I think it's partially because I didn't... Batman was really the first big movie that I ever did, and I think any director will tell you, you can never fully prepare for the weird sense, the abstract sense of pressure that comes with that. I think that it's just there's more money, there's more things, and it just gets bigger. It becomes a bigger, weirder animal. And I felt about the first Batman I actually basically just didn't feel like I do on other movies that I've worked on. And I was just out to I love the material, and I just wanted to feel about the material like I do about the other movies. So I think there was a couple of new characters in Batman Returns, and I felt like I had a bit more grasp on it, and just wanted to make it another movie and a better movie. And I felt there was new elements that would make it fresh and different that way.
Because your approach was pretty radical in the first Batman, it didn't get universal approval, but certainly the consensus of opinion was very positive. Why didn't you feel more positively about it?
Well, it was an odd situation to go through, because I actually felt it was much more of a cultural phenomenon than it was a good movie, really. I mean, and not to diminish the movie
just
in any way.
People who had grown up with the comic book and the TV series.
I think every now and then there's something that happens in the culture. I mean, part of my interest in the material had less to do with, I didn't really love comic books in any way. There was something about the image of that character and those characters that was very powerful to me and very attractive. So I think that it really does. It's almost like an American myth or American fairy tale, that character, in a sense, because it's, you know, the country hasn't been around that long, and there's not that sense of history and mythology. And I think that character, in my mind, always served as kind of a mythical or a fairy tale image in our country. And I think it's just a powerful, primal image. And so I think it had to do with that more than anything else, in a way. I think the movie, there's parts of it that are good, and then parts of it that maybe aren't so good. And because before the movie opened up, there was a big cultural, there was a lot of
incredible hype.
Yeah. And what was odd is that, you know, here, usually I'm sitting there, I'm a person that doesn't, if I hear too much about something, I run in the other direction. So it's a bit odd to be working on something and actually wanting to keep a lid on it, but it's all this other stuff going on that you really don't have any control over.
Did you like the comic book Batman as a kid?
I liked the image. Comic books were not, I don't know if I was slightly dyslexic. I could never tell which box to read. You know, they seemed to be very...
Well, I would think if you start at the top and then move left to right, that would be a good procedure.
No. I could read the Bob's Big Boy comics because they were very easy, but they got very. At least I guess I grew up in the era where they got kind of wordy and complicated, and they were no longer. They weren't visual to me. They were much more about words than they were about visuals to me.
Now, how about the TV series, which obviously was completely camp, Adam West?
I loved it. I mean, I remember running home to watch the show. Again, I didn't have any allegiance or anything to the comic. I liked the image, and I would love to see it in any sort of form. And I did like the TV show very much.
But of course, there were devotees of each or both who, even before your movie hit the screen, said, "What the hell is Tim Burton doing directing this? He does these weird pictures like, you know, Beetlejuice and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And why is Michael Keaton playing Batman?"
I felt like I loved the character, but I was not a complete 100% comic book fan, nor a complete, I liked the TV show. I was much more, so I felt like, well, you know, you've got these passionate factions on both sides, and I actually felt somewhere in the middle where I just loved the character, and also you just want to do something else with it in a way. And I think recently comics have come out and they've gotten quite extreme, and each comic has a different interpretation of these characters, and I find that very healthy for anything, really. Just new portrayals, new ideas about things, and I think that's there's no. See, they always say with comics, there's this is the history of Batman, right? Mm-hmm. And then you read in the like encyclopedia, and you find out basically what comics were about was a bunch of guys like, oh, what are we going to do this week? Let's just reinvent this, you know? I mean, there is no such thing as a complete history. There's only a kind of a persona and a mythology which you just try to be true to in a way.
So as a kid, I liked Superman. Yeah. But I liked Batman better because Superman had special powers, just like Wonder Woman did. Or the strangest of superheroes, Aquaman, whose basic thing was that he could communicate telepathically with fish. You know, and then when they would all get together, like in the Justice League of America, Superman, in order to make guys like the Green Arrow, who would like shoot a boxing glove arrow to knock somebody out, or Aquaman feel good, would let them do things that he could do easily that just kind of played to their special power.
There seems to be, I mean, I'm surprised Superman just didn't wipe them all out. I mean, you know, why, you know, just get rid of everybody. You know, I'm surprised in the League of Justice there was not those petty jealousies. You know, God, I wish I could fly through the damn air. You know,
they were all well adjusted.
No, well, that's what I love about Batman is that he's not. He's one of the more screwed up of the superheroes, and
just what I was getting to.
Yeah, it's great. You know, he's really. I find him. That's what I related to with him. He's just like. I'd always thought if he had gotten therapy, he wouldn't be dressing up like a bat, you know, if he'd worked out some of those problems in a way. You know, after 10 years, the doctor say, I think you can finally take off the bat suit and, you know, deal with it in another way, you know. But that's what I liked about there's a kind of a passion and a split with the character, which I really like, you know.
He's a real guy. Sure, he's an athlete, and he's real smart, and he's resourceful, but he's not the Flash.
No,
he's just a regular guy.
He's funneled his twisted passion in a way that's very specific, not necessarily 100% healthy, not necessarily 100%, you know. But that's what that's what I liked about the world of Batman, even with the villains. There's always this crossover with them, and in this one, they're just interesting, and it's a bit more gray as opposed to good versus evil, which I just find interesting.
And you saw the first Batman, obviously, as a conflict.
No, I never saw it. I just worked it. No.
A conflict between two disfigured people.
Yeah.
The Batman is emotionally disfigured when he's orphaned as he witnesses his parents' murder, and the Joker has been tossed into a vat of chemicals, and he's physically disfigured, and they come after each other.
Yeah, and there's just the themes of, again, repression, which Batman is somebody who wants to be repressed, and then the wonderful charm of somebody with complete liberation, doesn't care what anybody says, you know, that kind of split. Those kind of characters, like the Joker or a Beetlejuice, where they have no boundaries. They're basically stripped of any worry about what people think of them in some way, and just can do whatever they want. That's just I love those kind of themes and the mix of those two characters.
Gotham City itself is a star of this picture, this dark, foreboding place. It looks like a city where no zoning ordinance ever existed. You know, all these oddly shaped buildings, irregular structures, gargoyles everywhere, no light, everything dark. And it's in this setting that this little kid, this Bruce Wayne, watches his parents be murdered, and where eventually his pursuit of the Joker, who was a party to the murder, winds up with them on top of the cathedral. I mean, there's a whole opera-type aspect to this, you know, a grand opera thing.
Yes. I mean, we just sort of, the idea of Gotham, again, you know, what you get out of comics and what you get out of the material, at least what I do, is that it's heightened reality. I mean, again, I've always seen them less as comics as sort of American folk or fairy tales, and what I get out of those is real life portrayed to the extreme. And so we just took the idea of New York, or basically New York, where, you know, you look at one building, it's this, and the next building is this, and it's crammed, and they build buildings on top of other buildings, and it's just like layers and layers of stuff over one thing, and so we just tried to take the idea of that and heighten it, because again, you know, you're not going to do something realistic. It's just taking what, you know, we felt was the essence of something and portraying it on a much grander, more absurd scale. And because these places, they're not just sets, they are part of the character and the fabric of, they are, you know, it's like where you are, where you grow up. Any of us are really, and so, you know, it's part of what makes you up in some ways.
And we're back with the director, Tim Burton. Okay, let's get to some hard-hitting issues here. Why no Robin? And is there a Robin in Batman Returns?
Well, you know, it's funny. Again, you bring up the point of the comic. You know, comic book people, for the most part, don't like Robin. He's a fairly recent invention in the history of comic books. And I think a lot of comic book people are very passionate about. In fact, I think in one version they killed him off recently because the fans voted to off the kid, you know, and also, you know, it's like you've got it's a relationship that you can't just throw in there. I mean, they did it in the TV series, but it's sort of a campy. It's like, all right, here's a guy in little green boots. Let's not say a word about it. You know, let's see if anybody notices. You know,
he's sliding down a pole to spend inordinate amounts of time in a cave with an older man.
Exactly. It's fine if it's campy in a way, but we've tried to take this material, which is absurd, and give it a little bit of some psychological foundation, no matter how absurd it is. And we just can never quite figure out how to, you know, because if you're going to put the character in, since it's such a known character, we tried to, it wasn't doing it justice. And I mean, if we're going to do it, you got to do it right. And, you know, maybe, who knows what in the future if they do another one or something.
Suppose somebody else had been the Joker, somebody other than Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
How would you have had to reconfigure this thing? Because obviously once Nicholson is there, he steals every scene.
Well, you know, the thing about characters that's not just the human actor walking onto the set where they're being transformed in some ways. And I found that to be true in almost every character in everything that I've done. You don't come up with the image right away. You come up, I mean, the Joker is a bit more set because it's based on something that's has somewhat of a foundation. But still, you try to deal with the act. You never want to get to a point where it's just, this is the actor, you throw a bunch of makeup on him. You really do try to get out of it with the actor in a way. And you know, obviously Jack is perfect, and it's hard to think of anything else. But I mean, if it had been somebody else, you just take each thing individually, and it would have been, you know, maybe his lips would have been this big, you know, the hair would have been greener, less green, it would have been some, you know.
That's the physical stuff, but this guy obviously was able to connect on so many different levels.
Well,
the guy was evil, but he was also tragic, and then he was hysterically funny, all at the same time.
Well, Jack is an actor that is wonderful because he personalizes everything, which is great. He'll take anything, I imagine, and it goes through his. He's able to. You always are knowing that he's hooking something up to something in his life in some way, some theme, some issue, something or other, and I think you just see that and you feel the gravity of that when he's doing stuff, and it's great to watch because it's very intuitive and it's very strong, and it's just fun to be around.
What does a director do? Do you tell him anything, or do you just say the camera's on now?
No, he's great, and what's great about him is that he's somebody, you know, like I didn't understand anything he was saying a lot of the time, but people, nobody understands what I'm saying, so you know,
I was too polite to say it, but I'd sort of like to be a fly on the wall in a conversation between the two of you.
No, you know, but he had this thing where he's so intuitive and he's so knowledgeable. I mean, I've never known anybody that could sense where, I mean, he could find his light, do everything, you know, and he kind of lets you in on his philosophy of acting, which remember one thing he says, you know, never act standing up when you can act sitting down. You know, I mean, that's like his, and never act Tim, I'm not going to sit down in this because I can actually lie down in this scene. You know, he just is out to making it, like hitting the essence of it, you know, and finding it. But no, he's also done it so much that there's no, you're all there making it together, and you know, I like people that try to go through things with you, you know, and try to understand, you know, finish your sentences for you in a way, and work through things. But, you know, he's really masterful, obviously.
I read where you said that being a storyteller isn't really your greatest strength. It's all about mood and atmosphere and look and attitude, and maybe that's why Batman was successful, because even though you took some liberties and imposed your own vision upon it, the structure of a narrative is already there.
Yeah.
So that gives you some strength in an area where you don't come to it with as much natural strength.
Well, I mean, it's the one criticism I always get, and not just from people. It's like there's no story. I mean, I keep hearing that from every movie I ever do, and it's never bothered me. But when you keep hearing something, it's like, well, come on, you know, give me a break. I mean, there's other people that are wonderful storytellers, and that's great. I mean, you know, in some ways that's what movies are all about. But there should be opportunities to not have things be so literal, and not necessarily, you know, not necessarily have everything be told in the most literal, straightforward way. I mean, I think, you know, people are always bemoaning the state of movies and how studios are churning out the same kind of thing all the time. And for me, a lot of it has to do in terms of when you read criticism of films here, it's like they're all pushing for the same thing, it seems. And I don't know. It just seems to me everything would be a lot better if the framework could open up a bit more and you know, not be so intense, you know, have everything be spelled out so clearly.
Batman Returns.
Yeah.
No Nicholson.
No.
No Joker. Still no Robin.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton back as Batman.
Yeah.
And now the villains are the Penguin, Danny DeVito, and Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
All right. Why DeVito? Was it a difficult choice? I mean, obviously the guy's great, but
no. That was easy. He's 100%. Danny is great, and not only he's a perfect choice, but what was great about him is he was interested in trying to do something different here. You know, he just didn't want to be Danny DeVito as a, you know, a little cameo here. He's great, 100%. You know, I think because he's a director himself, he just knows he'd go through it with you.
You know, again, you can't avoid dissatisfaction, because as great as DeVito is, Burgess Meredith seemed definitive, right, as the Penguin in the Batman TV series.
Well, we
kind of fantastic.
Exactly, and what we did is that we just kind of, given our take on the material, just tried to reinvent it. In the comics, I always thought the Penguin was the weakest of the characters in the psychological sense, in terms of coming up with a foundation. So I feel very good about, we came up with something where it's different from the TV show, it's different from the comic, and yet I think and I hope on a grand, you know, it's different, but you know, there's a reason to call him the Penguin, you know.
Now let's save people a lot of money on tabloid purchases and get it right from the source about the Catwoman, who's played by Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes.
Sean Young, I guess, showed up on, what was it, the Joan Rivers show, dressed as the Catwoman, campaigned for the role, said she was perfect for the role, supposedly sat in your office.
Right.
Did you consider her? What's the deal?
Yeah, all of that sort of happened, but, you know, what it finally comes down to is just a choice. You know, there's this sort of injustice of Hollywood stuff that I kept reading about and not considering in the evils of Hollywood, which is an odd position to be lumped into for me. Casting finally comes down to a choice in a way, and you know, it doesn't have to do with a lot of times with anybody's good or bad. It's just you can sit in a room and argue endlessly, and it just comes down to a choice.
You know, I'm sitting here saying to myself, I'm not exactly sure where this conversation about Batman began or ended, but I sort of enjoyed it. So we don't want to edit any of it or have to stop. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it right here. Remind you that Batman Returns opens on June 19th, and then we'll talk about Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and Pee-wee's Big Adventure the next time with Tim Burton. And we won't even ask you to go to wardrobe to get a fresh change.
Well, this is all I have. I have 20 of these outfits in my closet, so I'll go change and everything will be fine.
And we'll see you later.